What are the top 5 cartridges for hunting in Colorado? Hi everybody, welcome back to LocaCarnivore, the hunting, guns, and adventure channel for smart people. And we know you're smart because you're watching us and not something vapid like, well, a Mr. Beast video or something of that ilk. Hey, today we're going to talk about the top 5 cartridges for hunting in Colorado. We did a similar video a little while ago on top 5 cartridges for hunting in Montana. So today we're going to talk about the top 5 for hunting in Colorado. Before we get started, we got to give you the usual pitch. Give us a big like, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate you following us. Don't forget to ring that little bell. Go ahead and support us over at Patreon. It's the only way that we get any funding at this point in time. The link's down in the description. We'd appreciate it from you. And of course, also down in that description is a link to our website, LocaCarnivore. Don't forget to go down and comment. We really appreciate your opinions, and on these type of videos we always get a lot of comments because it seems inevitable that we skip over somebody's favorite cartridge or cartridges, and that's just the way it's going to be. I mean, we have to pick 5 and there's what, a gazillion cartridges out there, so there's no way we can hit everybody's fave. Sorry if we didn't mention yours. It's not a disrespectful thing, it's just we had to make some choices and these are the choices we made. So these are my opinions based on my experience as to what is good for hunting in Colorado. Hey, don't forget to share this video. Let's put some legs on this thing. Let's make it go viral. Share it with your friends. Share it with people you don't like. We don't care. Just share it. Also, remember to stay all the way to the end of the video. I mean, we're going to cover these top 5 cartridges, and so every piece of this video has information that is good for you and that you will want. Now, as we said before, we did do a video about the hunting cartridges for Montana, and now we're doing Colorado. Colorado is a little different than Montana. Montana has only the thinnest of regulations as far as the types of guns and ammunition, things like that. You just can't use like, well, self-propelled rockets, cruise-served howitzers, things like that. But otherwise, it's pretty open. But in Colorado, it's a little bit different. They're a little more stringent. They always have been. For instance, the minimum caliber that you can use is 24 caliber, so you can use like your .243. So leave your .22 250 and your .223, etc. at home because you can't use them in Colorado to hunt big game. Also, you need a minimum of a 70 grain bullet for deer and a minimum of an 85 grain bullet for elk. Also, the impact velocity, i.e. when the bullet hits the target, hits the critter, has to be 1,000 foot-pounds of energy. The main thing about hunting in Colorado is somewhat like Montana. The state is geographically 2 separate entities. You have the mountains, which are essentially the western full half of the state, and then you have the what's called the Eastern Plains, which is a slightly rolly version of Nebraska and Kansas. There's a lot of hunting out on the plains as well as in the mountains, although most people, when they think of hunting in Colorado, they think of this big guy right here. Yeah, everybody wants a wapiti hanging on their wall, so that's what they come to Colorado for. The elk hunting there is world famous, it's world class. That's not to say that there are other states that have great elk hunting, but Colorado is renowned for it. Draws people from around the world. So with these 2 different environments, what kind of cartridges, oddly enough, you can use basically the same type of cartridge in either environment. In the plains, you're going to be looking more at white-tailed deer, some mule deer, and of course, pronghorn antelope, one of my favorites. So you're going to bring a slightly different gun. You're going to want a very flat shooting gun that does not get influenced by wind drift as much as something else might. But up in the mountains, you're also going to need that sort of thing as well. Actually, despite the fact that it has become grossly overpopulated, it's still a very vast place to go and hunt. All right, so the first cartridge we picked out and as I said, we don't have them in necessarily in a particular order, but we will end up with what I consider the best all-around cartridge for Colorado. But the first cartridge I picked out is the 257 Weatherby. In Colorado, the shots tend to be longer than in Montana. Especially up in the mountains, you're almost always shooting across valleys or across gullies and draws and things like that. So you do need a very flat shooting cartridge, and of course, as we said about the eastern plains, flat shooting cartridges are also of benefit there. Also, we need to make sure that we have enough juice on this thing to deal with elk. Although the 257 Weatherby, the reason I like it is it's a laser beam. It just shoots so flat. The maximum point blank range on this thing is around, depending on the bullet you're using, but if you're using one of the more sophisticated long range bullets, say like a 110 grain Nosler Accubond, the maximum point blank range on this thing is around 345 yards, give or take 10 yards. And that's just incredible. It basically means that out to 345 yards, you don't have to do any holdover. You don't have to do any dial-a-prayers on your scope turrets or anything like that. You just point and shoot. If you're using a good slippery bullet, again like that 110 grain Nosler Accubond, your deer effective range is going to be about 790 yards, and on elk about 780 yards. So really roughly the same. Now, of course, if you use a less slippery bullet like a Partition or something like that, you should dial down that effective range by anywhere from 100 to 200, even 250 yards. But those ranges I just provided you give you at least 1,200 foot-pounds of energy at impact at those ranges. So that still meets Colorado legitimacy. And in my opinion, it's enough for elk. It's a little ragged. There's debates of whether 1,500, even I like 1,800 foot-pounds, frankly, impact energy on elk. I've seen them taking huge amounts of punishment and still keep on rolling. So you do need a lot of gun with elk, in my opinion. And I think the 257 Weatherby is a very good choice for a Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep or mountain goat hunt. It shoots so flat and it arrives on target so fast that the wind really doesn't have much chance to work on it. So it's a very good choice for that sort of hunt. Right, number 4 on our list is the 270 Winchester, which is a tried and true Western cartridge. Jack O'Connor at Outdoor Life magazine was the biggest proponent of this thing. Cartridge has been around since roughly the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken, and it's just a great cartridge. The heavier bullets like the 150 to 160 grains, and there's a couple out there now that are even heavier at that. They're the super long distance bullets now, and those are perfect for elk. There's a lot of elk have fallen with 270 bullets stuck into them. So don't be afraid to take a 270 on your Colorado hunt, or on your elk hunt for that matter. But it's at its best as a deer cartridge with that 130 to 140 grain projectile, especially the 130s. It is renowned for being able to reach across a gully or from mesa to mesa and drop an unsuspecting muley that thought, oh, I'm perfectly safe. Those monkey things over there with the fire sticks are way away from me. They could never get to me. And then smack, here comes a 270 grain or a 270 bullet, and over they go and into the freezer they go. Now your max point blank range with the 270 Winchester is about 295 yards, and that's with the 150 grain Nosler Accubond long range. Again, dial it back for a less slippery bullet, maybe about 200 yards or so. But this is still renowned as a genuine deer killer at 400 or 500 yards easily. Elk, again with that ABLR bullet, is 700 yards as well. And again, that gives you 1,200 foot-pounds minimum energy. I'd like to see a little closer with a 270 than 700 yards on an elk, but it's generally it's a viable proposition on elk to 400, 500 yards easily. All right, number 3 on our hit parade for cartridges that are best for hunting in Colorado. I decided to pick a 6.5 cartridge because 6.5s are really the hot thing right now. And guess what? It's not the Creedmoor. Sorry guys. And yeah, I got a real ration again from the president of the International Brotherhood of 6.5 Creedmoor shooters. You can see him right up there, not happy. And here's his whole gang. So the 6.5 cartridge I picked out is the 6.5 PRC. That's the Precision Rifle cartridge. It's part of Hornady's Cartridge of the Month Club that they've started a few years back, basically trying to run the gun industry the way the Apple runs the electronics industry. They convince you that the thing you have right now is completely obsolete because of this new thing that just came out, and you must absolutely go out and buy this new thing, new guns, new everything, and especially their ammunition, because inevitably they're the only ones loading the ammunition to begin with. So they will, and then once you get that all going and you get it dialed in and you like it, guess what? They switch you again to another cartridge. Hey, this new one's even better, blah, blah, blah. You know, in the mainstream gun press, they just go crazy over it and gush effusively, basically writing or regurgitating Hornady's ad copy for the thing. But in this particular case, I think Hornady's spot on with the 6.5 PRC. It is, in my opinion, probably going to become one of the best all-around 6.5 cartridges around there that we have. Basically, it hits a lot harder and goes a lot farther than the Creedmoor. It still has a reasonable amount of, tolerable amount of recoil, a little more than the Creedmoor, but less than the larger Magnum-sized 6.5s. And it's not going to burn out your barrel, at least not nearly as fast as the old 264 Winchester Magnum, or the 27 Nosler, or the Weatherby versions, and ad nauseum all these super hot rodded cartridges. And besides, you don't need to drive a 6.5mm bullet to hyper velocities. I think it needs to go a little faster than the Creedmoor, perhaps, especially for elk at longer ranges. But it does not need to be in the hypersonic missile territory. So the 6.5 PRC is going to give you, if you're using a 142 grain Accubon long range, and no, I'm not shilling for Nosler. I just picked this bullet because it's one of the better long range bullets out there. But if you want to use a Berger, you want to use a Hornady, you want to use a Sierra, whatever, I don't care. If you're in the same general vicinity on your ballistic coefficient, you're going to get similar results. Of course, your mileage may vary. But with a bullet like that bullet, your max point blank range with the 6.5 PRC is around 300, 305 yards. That's still fantastic. Your effective range with the long range bullets for deer and elk both are right at about 800 yards. Again, if we use a less slippery bullet, dial that back about 200 yards or so. My opinion is the real envelope for this cartridge on elk is right at about 500 yards from a practical standpoint, and deer at about 600 to 700 yards on a practical basis. And if there's one thing I think the 6.5 PRC is stellar at, it would be probably, of all the cartridges we talked about, in my opinion, it would be the choice for that bighorn sheep or mountain goat hunt, because it's going to shoot exceptionally flat. It's going to deliver a lot of hurt when it arrives, so it's going to knock down that goat or that sheep and anchor them, hopefully keep them from kicking their way off a ledge so you don't have to go down 2,000 feet to retrieve the poor thing. So again, I think of all the other cartridges, it would be a good choice. It fits in a short action rifle, so it can be built around one of these super lightweight mountain rifles that are out there, and it would be an outstanding choice for a custom rifle, in my opinion. And the 6.5, well, it's going to deliver that good energy and good penetration for these somewhat heavier creatures like the bighorn, and not drifted or anything. It's going to do it with a lot less recoil than the 300 Win Mags or any of the other belted magnums, etc., that you could use for these hunts. But I think in those lightweight rifles, it's going to be a much more polite cartridge. Okay, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Here's number 2 on our hit parade of cartridges, of the best cartridges for hunting in Colorado. And that is, in my opinion, the .338 Winchester Magnum. Now, there's a lot of .338s out there, so why on earth would I pick a cartridge which was developed in the early 1960s? Well, frankly, it still does the job, and to be honest with you, you really don't need to punish yourself with any more recoil than the .338 Win Mag already dishes out, and trust me, you're going to get slapped by this puppy at the shoulder, especially if you're shooting it off the bench all day for low development and things like that. So it's going to beat you up a bit, but What it does give you in return is absolute Thor-like power. It is a thunderclap when it hits something. And the 338 bullets have a unique feature of, compared to other rifle bullets out there, they have fantastically high ballistic coefficients, even the more mundane bullets like the Partitions, Sierra Game King, things like that. And when you get into the long-range bullets like the ABLR and stuff, the BCs are just basically off the chart. You look at the numbers, you go, that can't be, and you double check it, but it's right. Fantastic BCs and tremendous sectional densities. These things, somewhat similar to the 6.5 millimeter bullets, they penetrate, just go right into animals, right through animals even, and they're definitely going to hammer your elk and do a lot of damage once they get into that elk. But they're better than the 6.5 millimeter bullets because they make much wider wound tracks in the animal than the 6.5s could ever hope to. They make tremendous wounds, and if you use a good bullet that's a controlled expansion bullet, even on deer, you can use a 338 on deer. I've seen it done. Heck, I've used 375 H&H's on deer, but with proper ammunition selection, the 338 will suffice for all of your hunting needs in Colorado, but it's particularly suited well to elk. This thing is a noted elk hammer. Now your max point blank range using a long range bullet is going to be about 275, 280 yards, and maybe a little bit less with a less slippery bullet down around the 260 range. But remember, I said most game animals are shot at 200 yards or less, therefore it's not that critical thing. Now your effective range with the 338 Win Mag for deer and elk are both at 1,000 yards. They're actually higher than 1,000 yards, but this super long range shooting thing I think is probably not the best idea for most hunters because they're not that good at shots. So I'm not going to encourage that by quoting a distance even beyond 1,000 yards. But you folks that use 338s, you know what I'm talking about. And no, you don't need to go to a LocaCarnivore, you don't need to go to a RUM or any of those, or the Weatherbys to get sufficient performance. Again, I think 1,000 yards is more than good enough for just about anybody. And of course, cut that back about 200 to 300 yards if you're using a high drag bullet, a low BC bullet. But the 338 Win Mag, it was Elmer Keith's favorite elk cartridge, so that should tell you something. If that man liked it, it's good enough for you and it's good enough for me. On the right, 5.56 by 45. On the left, 300 Winchester Magnum. All right, time now for my #1 favorite cartridge for hunting in Colorado, and that's the 300 Win Mag. The 300 Win Mag, it's another one of the belted magnums. It was developed by Winchester, and Remington tried a few things, of course, with the 7mm, etc. But this is one of the early belted magnums that were produced on a 3/06 length cartridge. So they took the 375 H&H cartridge and they just shortened it down enough so it would fit in a standard 3/06 length action. So you get the 338, the 300, the 264 ad nauseum. But the 300 Win Mag, just other than the 300 Win Mag, has had more longevity and is much more popular than even its bigger brother, the 338. Mainly because it gives you tremendous power, but it doesn't hurt you so bad at the shoulder you don't want to shoot the thing. Yeah, it's more than a 30-06 for recoil, but it's not nearly what the 338 will dish out to you. So this is a tried and true cartridge. It's available everywhere. It will handle bullets from very low weight, 110 grains even, all the way up to well over 200 grains. So speaking to that, if you use the 210 grain, a 210 grain long range type bullet like the AccuBond long range, your max point blank range with this thing is about 295 yards, roughly. So that's close enough to 300 yards, which is fantastic. And it will not drift substantially on you either. It's got more than enough juice on it to anchor an elk, so don't worry about that. You've got enough power there. So with that long range bullet, again, like the 338 Win Mag, your effective range in both deer and elk is at 1,000 yards, but in this case, unlike the 338, it's really right at that 1,000 yard mark, and you're right down on the floor, 1,200 foot-pounds of energy at that point. But the 300 is going to give you tremendous power, far more reach than the 30-06 will or 308, yet it's not going to beat you up as bad as the heavier, more powerful cartridges, which you frankly don't need that much power because the 300 delivers, like I said, all the way out to 1,000 yards. So there it is, the top 5 cartridges for hunting in Colorado. And we want to thank you for taking your valuable time and spending it with us. Hopefully you got some good information out of this, and by all means go down and comment. Let us know what you thought of it and give us your suggestions, what you think would be a good cartridge for hunting in Colorado. As always though, stay aware, stay safe, be kind, and we'll see you next time on LocaCarnivore.